Hello there, and welcome to the ECG seminar for pathophysiology. And today what I wanted to highlight is some things to prepare you for the ECG credit test. Some things I'd like to highlight before starting is that the goal of the seminar isn't really to take you step by step and practice with you all of the examples of the scripta. No, that is your job that you have to do. That it's basically your homework, you could say, that you have to cover all of the examples of the scripta. What the goal of this seminar is that it is to help you avoid making some groundbreaking mistakes, some game-breaking mistakes during the credit test. Because what I noticed, and this is what motivated to do the seminar, is that like a lot of small pieces of information that could totally sort of just ruin the ECG for you, you don't notice such critical points except during the test, sadly. So the goal of the seminar is to let you know about these points before you get the credit question, you know. So starting off, let us go right to it. What I'd recommend before starting and going through this seminar is that you're not blank, in that you don't have any information. No, go study ECG first and then come back. What I mean by study is that take the paper that I think they should have given you already. It's like a paper which contains the description, like how to describe an ECG, and includes these 10 steps and basically how you tackle each of them, etc. You know, you should already have some knowledge of ECG. Maybe even practiced a few questions if you find that helpful, and then come back. Yeah. The goal here again is to help you avoid making game-breaking mistakes. Okay. So after you have gone through the sheet of paper, which includes the ECG description, Department of Pathophysiology, and it explains point by point and what is the physiological, what is the pathological value? Yeah, that is what you need. So do that first. Next point I want to highlight is that for winter semester, what is expected of you in the credit test? What's expected of you? I wish I made a slide about this information rather than just talking to blank, just audio. But allow. So basically, what you are supposed to do in the credit test is actually you're not asked to come with the final conclusion, like does the patient have, I don't know, myocardial infarction, or does he have like a scar after myocardial infarction, or does he have left bundle branch block, blah blah blah. You don't need these things. No, you need to point out the pathological values or the pathological occurrences throughout these 10 steps. You know, so you just have to write down exclamation mark next to point 1 or something like that, you know, because the patient's rhythm is irregular, but you don't have to interpret why is it irregular. Okay, you mark that, oh, QRS is prolonged in lead V1, but you don't have to conclude what does that mean. Oh, it's a long Q. Oh, it means scar after myocardial infarction, something like that. You don't need that. Okay, so the goal is that you just mark, oh, QRS is prolonged in lead something. You write that down. You know, you write that down next, like in that sheet that you have. Yeah. So without further ado, time to start. By going through the paper, you should already know what are the physiological, what are the pathological values for each of these things and what you should be looking for. So this you should already know before starting. Next thing is that we're going to highlight some of these points, and we're going to highlight the main tricky things in them, like, you know, the main things to watch out that you don't make a mistake in. Yeah. So starting off with action. Okay, action, i.e., is it regular or irregular? Is the EEG, are the RR intervals, are they regular or irregular? First thing, of course, you have to check, is it the difference between the RR intervals, it should differ by less than 0.16. What do I mean by this? Like, basically, I'm gonna just jump to the first example. Okay, what we're looking for is that basically this is the RR interval. Okay, all right, that's good. This RR interval should be the same as this one. This one should be the same as this one, with a maximum difference of 0.16. Okay, beyond a difference of 0.16, you say no, this guy has irregular rhythm. Okay, so that's the first thing about the rhythm you have to point out. Is it regular or not? How do you say this? Is based on the RR intervals. Are they all the same? Are they are they like the same? Are they the same RR interval with a maximum tolerance of like 0.16? If it's beyond 0.16, then you say no, that's too much. Okay, and of course by 0.16 that means like because each tiny square, like from the line to the dot, is 0.04 seconds. So about like 4 of these tiny dots. Okay, like 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 small boxes. That's the maximum difference of RR interval that you can tolerate. Yeah. What I'm going to be using is, well, I don't have a piece of paper to show you how to do this. Basically, I'm going to use this notepad. So what I do is that basically, this is a handy trick. Of course, you won't be using Notepad program on your test. You'll just be using your finger, your finger or a sheet of paper, like, you know. And you'll just be like, okay, I draw, like I make a mark here and a mark here. Like a mark at this one's head and at the peak of this one, at the peak of this one, and then you just move this along the way and see, is it regular or not? Okay, this is roughly regular, tolerance of 0.16, of course. Regular, sort of regular. Okay, it's a bit undetailed right now, but yeah, it's still regular. It's a bit hard to like maneuver with this thing. Roughly regular, irregular, right there. See how much the difference is between like this, like the distance between this peak and that is more than 0.16, so we don't tolerate it. Yeah, so there we can say no, it's an irregular heart rate, you know, along those lines. We'll go into more details about this. Actually, there's more information about this particular ECG that we'll talk about, but that was just roughly how you use it. There's going to be an exception here, we're going to talk about it, but we'll get to that point in a bit. Okay, I just hope you got the idea of how to use this sliding piece of paper. Let's call it the sliding paper technique. Hello. So ancient technique, the sliding paper technique. Okay, anyways, so that is checking whether it's regular or irregular, and the maximum tolerance is 0.16 milliseconds. Okay, not seconds, milliseconds. Sorry, it is seconds. 0.16 seconds is the maximum you can tolerate. Anyways, 0.16 seconds, yes. So regular versus irregular. Extrasystoles. This is might be a topic that you didn't focus on very much. Extrasystole. What is an extrasystole? It is some extra beat that is totally not supposed to be there. It's not. It doesn't have anything that it shouldn't be there. Like, you know. So just walking normally across the ECG, then bam, a beat just pops up out of nowhere. It is. How do I say this? It is not expected. You could say it is. Like you're just going across the normal rhythm, and then bam, like an extra beat. You can literally feel that it's like third wheeling. Like, you know, it's just popping out there, and it's not supposed to be there. And sometimes, quite often, it's going to look very bizarre compared to the rest of the rhythm of the heart. You know, it looks like a really weird beat, but this isn't always present. You know, this isn't always present. So that is the main thing. We'll get to examples of it now. What is an extrasystole and what to look out for. There can be multiple extrasystoles in one lead. You know, in one lead. Okay, they can, or rather, like, you know, there can be multiple of them. Okay. And one thing that I wanted to highlight, very important, is that an extrasystole is not representative of heart activity. It is not representative of the heart activity. What does this mean? It means when you're measuring, when you're going through these 10 points, don't use a bizarre extrasystole and like base your answers off of it. So you see a bizarre extrasystole with a massive QRS complex, and you're like, haha, QRS complex is 0.32 or something like that, which is extremely prolonged and it's ridiculous. And it's probably not going to be the case, like an extrasystole is going to be that big. But what I'm trying to say is that you don't use that value as a whatchamacallit. You don't use that value as your you don't mark that as pathological QRS. No, because it is not representative of the heart's activity. You don't say, oh no, the heart must have some sort of like problem with its contractility, whatever, it's like hypertrophy or something like that. No, that's incorrect, because it is an extrasystole. Extrasystole, by definition, it is extra, and it is not representative of the heart's general activity. Like, you know, you don't base your answer upon it. Like, you know, it is its own case, just leave it on its own, you know. So an example would be like, let's just look for an example. Yeah, like this one, okay. So don't go and say that, oh, this in this ECG I see that there is like in lead 3 there is, oh snap, that's QRS of like what that's like 1 point something, or wait, I'm actually not 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 something, like, so it's like 0.36 QRS complex of 0.36. Oh man, what is this person? How did he even manage to do that? You don't base your answer off of extrasystoles. Understand this, okay? So if that's okay, that is the idea of extrasystoles. So check multiple leads for shape that stands out. This is also interesting. So what the thing about extrasystoles as well is that basically, let's see an example of it again. Sometimes an extrasystole, you can't really tell, you know, that this is the extrasystole here. You won't really notice it until you start to look in the other leads that it really looks standing out, like, you know. So if you're not sure, is something like, is it a normal beat or is it an extrasystole, look in another lead and you'll find it to be quite standing out, quite bizarre, you know. So like, for example, you're just going here, all of these beats roughly look normal, okay, on this lead. Now go to the next lead, you'll find this is totally not normal. Like, this beat was an extrasystole and it was standing out. You see this one? This one's standing out. Here again, we thought this was a normal beat. Again, it's standing out here. We thought this was a normal beat. It's standing out. And so on. You get the idea, right? And even these, they're standing out from the rest of the beats. Yeah? So that's what I wanted to highlight. We'll get to more about the examples later, but I just wanted to clarify these points. Is that what is your judgment regarding an extrasystole? You do not base your answer upon it. That is the first point. So let me just add this to the seminar literally, because totally gonna keep this part in the or I'm just worried about it being misunderstood. Okay, so just keep it in your mind that don't base your answer off of it, okay? Like, don't base, oh, there's pathological QRS based on the extrasystole, okay? I'll just find a way to phrase it nicely in the later on. Anyways, so that's about extrasystole, okay? Next thing is, of course, you don't base your answer on them, because they're okay, I think I'll write that. They are not representative of the heart's activity. We can say that. There we go. I think that's good. So you'll get the modified version. Okay. So next point is that you check multiple leads to see if the shape stands out in any other lead. Okay. That's the second thing. Third thing is that we check if any single small part of ECG is irregular. This is another interesting thing. So basically, it could just be that the lead looks perfectly normal and the rhythm looks perfectly normal, but it's irregular just in one point. Like, only in one part of the lead, it's irregular, which is very strange. That how come it's going all normal except in one place it's irregular? What does that mean? Well, it might just be that it's just one extrasystole and it's popping out. What's your judgment regarding this? What would you say about the rhythm? Well, you would say that the rhythm, actually, you say it's a regular rhythm with an extrasystole. Okay? So you have tolerance of one extrasystole. If it's two extrasystoles, khalas, you can say that, no, it's irregular. That's beyond what we tolerate, okay? So if it's one extrasystole, you can actually say it's all right. It's regular. It is regular rhythm with an extrasystole. But if it's more than one extrasystole, you say no, it's irregular rhythm. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to highlight. So those are the points, and that's for action. That is the main thing for action that I wanted to highlight. I didn't order this presentation properly, did I? Where is that? Yeah. There we go. You guys are seeing live editing right here. Okay, so second point is rhythm. Okay, after mentioning the idea of the action, is it regular or irregular? Next thing we want to cover is the rhythm. Is the rhythm sinus or non-sinus? And I think this slide is going to be the most tricky, the most important part. Okay, in fact, I think I might even delay this for just a bit, because it is quite chunky, and I think I'll just postpone it. Okay, because it is its own topic. Okay, so let's keep it unordered. Let's just make a new slide right here. Just say, we'll get to that in a bit. Okay, there we go. So third thing, heart rate. Let's keep it simple for now. Let's just cover the heart rate. So the heart rate, how do you calculate it? It's again, we're just following these points. Okay, so we're here in the heart rate. Heart rate, how do you calculate it? You take 1,500 and you divide it by the RR interval that you calculated. Yeah, so if you calculate between these two peaks is, I don't know, like what, 1 2 3 1 2 3 4, so like 34 millimeters. So we take 1,500 divided by 34, and that gives you the heart rate. Okay, that's one way to do it. That is not the easiest way to do it. Thankfully, there is a much easier way, although that wasn't too difficult, but I'll allow it. So the easiest way to do it is actually just count the number of beats on your sheet and multiply it by 6. And this, according to your paper, is that basically you do this when the rhythm is regular, and you do this when the RR interval, when the action is irregular. This is when the action is regular. This is when the action is irregular. But to be honest, this option you can do it all the time. You know, I find it easier. Pathophysics department don't mind at all. The answer is always very similar, or very close to this one. You know, so you can just count the number of beats and multiply it by 6. Probably in clinics, when you're working with an ECG in the hospital, probably not the best idea, because they cut the piece of paper short. So I don't know if that would actually work, but I don't know. Well, I can look into that when I get in trouble for doing it the wrong way, and I'll let you guys know if I can. Anyways, so that's how you calculate the heart rate. I like this one. For pathophysiology's sake, you can just use this one. Okay. So fourth thing is the P wave. Okay. We'll actually get into more details about this in a bit, and so I think we'll leave this. We'll just push this later. So without further ado, I think we'll just start tackling some examples, and then we'll cover the rest of the points a bit later. All right? So normally I would stop and ask, hey students, like in a seminar, in a non-COVID time when we're in a classroom, I'd ask like, okay, and I stop all the students, okay, if you raise your hand if you don't understand, and I'd just be waiting there for a while, no one's raising, and I'll be like, okay, I'm not going to continue until someone asks a question. But of course, now you have the liberty of, I don't have to repeat anything, because you can just replay the video if you don't understand. Okay, and if you do get stuck, try and send me a message, and I absolutely won't mind at all to help out. So starting off, let's go with an ECG, and as always, be very systematic. Okay, always follow these 10 points whenever you tackle any ECG. Okay, to save time, we won't be you'll be doing this on your own, but to save time, we won't be going through all of the points. Like, we won't be seeing all the ST elevation, T inversion, QT, all items. We won't be doing that in this seminar, but you'll be doing it when you are practicing the 50 examples of ECG. Okay, and I stress again, be systematic and use these 10 points. It is very, very helpful, and it is for your own ease. It's for your own sake. Just stick with these 10 points, okay? Remember them off by heart and just tackle like that. Go through the 10 points, okay? So starting off, first ECG. What is the problem here? Okay, that is my question for you. Go through the points and come back, okay? And in the seminar, I'd normally give like 10 seconds, but I don't know. You guys can pause for a bit longer, and when you're ready, you can just play the video. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so basically, if you need more time, just pause the video and think. So, what is the pathology with this ECG? Well, we start off by going step by step. We start off with action. Is it regular or irregular? And as I highlighted before, I made this like notepad file and I just started to scan through it. So this is the R interval, and I just want to see. Yeah, same, good, 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 bad. Okay, this is way too much. This is not tolerable. Okay, so this is irregular. But however, it's a bit strange, isn't it? Because continue again. It's regular and it's still regular, right? So it seems that the only problem really is this beat right here, this one right here. So what does this tell us? What is this? This is an extrasystole. Yeah? So this is actually, we call this regular rhythm with an extrasystole. Okay, that's how you mark it. Okay? Give me just a second to pull out the page. Yeah. So you say just that it is regular with a single extrasystole, and I think you should mark it as pathology, but you still call it regular with extrasystole. Otherwise, if there's more than one extrasystole, you would say irregular rhythm. You know. So that's the idea, and as you see, extrasystoles don't always look so alien. They can blend in very well. As you see here, it looks very normal. Yeah. So that's an extrasystole. What else are the points? So next thing we want to see is the 2 is rhythm. We'll get to that. How does rhythm work? The basic idea of it is that we check before each QRS complex, is there a P wave or not? And the best one is typically lead 2. And this here we see P wave, P wave, P wave, P wave, P wave. Yeah, all the way before every QRS complex. Yes, there is a P wave. So we can say that it is normal. Okay, we'll get more to point 2 in a bit. Okay, the main thing I want to focus on is point 1 in this in these next 3, in this example, in the next 3 examples. Okay, so I think that's enough. I just wanted to highlight in this ECG. We might get back to it later, but for the time being, all I wanted to highlight is the idea of this being an extrasystole, and still it counts as a regular, technically speaking. But yeah, extrasystoles can hide. Next one. What is the pathology? Lol. 3, 2, 1. You can pause, of course, if you would like. If not, then and you can do the whole thing if you like. I'm just going to focus on the first point, just to clarify. I'm just going to focus on the first point. Okay, so again, what we try to do is we check, is it regular or irregular rhythm? So we check over here. I'm just gonna take this here and just backspace it once. That's roughly it. Yeah, I just scan this across. Of course, I need a bit of a steady hand because this is a mouse that I'm using. Something's going on here. Is it irregular? Maybe, I don't know. Okay, it's roughly regular, maybe a bit irregular here. Of course, when you go to another lead, you notice that there is a singular extrasystole over there. Like, you know, I pointed with my hand there. With the mouse here, you see that there's an extrasystole. So technically speaking, this can also count as regular rhythm with a singular extrasystole. Give me just a second, because I don't want to mess you guys up. I've got my ECG in front of me. Yeah, so it's regular with a singular extrasystole. Okay, onwards. So here, you can have a few seconds. You can pause if you like, if you'd like to think about this first. Alright, so here again, we're just scanning, and of course you get the same idea. You scan through the paper and you check, is it regular or not? But what I wanted to highlight is that clearly, even just by seeing it, you clearly see that it is irregular. Okay, so let me just modify it like that. So already I don't think that's tolerable. No, that's definitely not tolerable. Then you continue and it's not tolerable again. It's not tolerable again. As you see, it is definitely irregular all over in this area. And so we say that it is irregular rhythm. Then we have to check for extrasystoles, and we definitely notice in this lead, we don't notice anything actually. It might be normal. It looks irregular, but I don't see any extrasystoles on this lead. But of course, all these leads are happening simultaneously. These are all different views of the same thing. Like this is the activity of the heart for 10 seconds. In those 10 seconds, those exact same 10 seconds, we're seeing them from a different angle, from this window, from this window, from this window. So this is an extrasystole still, even if we don't recognize it as being an extrasystole on lead 1, it really is an extrasystole, and it really shows on the other leads because it has a totally different morphology compared to the other beats over here. Normal, 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 bam, it's just like that. Okay, this as well and this as well. So we've got multiple extrasystoles, so we just call it flat out irregular rhythm. Okay, so that is the main thing I wanted to highlight for this one. Some of these examples will be repeated. Oh, I'm very sorry. I should have been doing this from the start, but this is well, not necessarily. But anyways, for simplicity's sake, you can just follow the seminar. But this was the first example was question 13 of the scripta. I'm taking all of my questions from the scripta directly. So this is 13. This is 25. This is 10. This is 29. I'll do this better more often afterwards. So, but right now it's not necessary. I'm just explaining the first point for now, just the action so far. The other points will be hopefully a lot faster. So here we definitely notice something ain't right. There's this big pause over here in the beginning, and so that definitely ain't regular, you know. That is definitely not regular at all as well, because the pause happens multiple times. So this is typical textbook irregularity. Okay, are there any extrasystoles? Well, you just go around here and you start to check while I check my ECG scripta, low key. So no, you skim through it and you check, and nothing seems out of the ordinary. You check the other leads, and no, there's no very strange morphology, and there's no single place where it looks like the rhythm is particularly extra, if you get what I mean, you know. Also, the idea is that nothing pops out which was unexpected. This is just some long, like an empty phase, then it's going, is slowing down, and then there's an emptier phase here, slowing down, slow here. So it's not proper, you know. Again, I want to highlight that to calculate heart rate, as always, you just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, multiply by 6, 66. That's the heart rate, okay? Easy as that. In all the previous examples, you can do the exact same thing. Whether it's regular or irregular, you can just do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 by 6, 72. Yeah, and you're done. It's very easy. That's 1.1 and 0.3. Those are the main things that I want to highlight about them. And for that, we are pretty much done. Now we can continue to the next point, point 2, okay? About the rhythm, and then point 4 about the P wave, okay? So just to return again, just to highlight the important how it is to go systematic, we start with action, then we describe the rhythm, then heart rate, P waves, okay? Regarding the rhythm, we want to see, is it sinus rhythm or is it non-sinus, okay? So what does it mean, sinus? Sinus rhythm means that there is a P wave before every QRS, okay? In lead 1 and lead 2, okay? But it's not always visible on lead 1, so it's enough just to have it on lead 2, okay? That P wave is visible in either lead 1 or lead 2 all the time, and before every QRS complex in either lead 1 or lead 2, we see it, and before every QRS complex, and it is positive, okay? Before every QRS complex, okay? After knowing this, we say that it is sinus rhythm, and you can't imagine how tricky this point actually is. It can seem very simple, but based on this point, you can, because this is this is a crossroads, okay? If you say that it is sinus rhythm, you're going to base off so many other conclusions and things throughout your ECG solving based on the idea that it's sinus rhythm. Well, it's not, and you ended up calculating a whole bunch of things that you're not supposed to calculate if it's not sinus, you know, because you thought it was sinus and you calculated these other things. Then you found out the professor, after you give him the paper, he tells you no, it's not sinus, and you even calculate this, which you're not supposed to calculate because it's not sinus, and this is non-sinus. This is actually, you thought it was one mistake, it ended out being like 4 mistakes. Bam, come next time. hopefully this prevents such awkward situations. And it doesn't always turn out that bad, so don't worry. But I'm just saying this for the sole reason just to highlight how important it is to get this point properly, okay? So what is the rhythm? Sinus versus non-sinus. You gotta check, is there a P wave behind every QRS complex in lead 1 or lead 2? Lead 2 is typically easier to see. And are they positive, okay? And the thing is here, the most important thing I wanted to highlight is the idea of flutters and flutter and fibrillation. This part we actually didn't get we didn't know it properly until the day before the exam that we, or rather on the day of the exam that we found out quite a few things about flutter and fibrillation. So that was quite funny, good times. But what I wanted to highlight here is flutter and fibrillation. Okay, what are they? They are types of rhythm. There are several rhythms, but just to keep things simplified, we're gonna say sinus or non-sinus. We're gonna say when it's non-sinus, we say that it is either flutter or fibrillation, for simplicity's sake, for third year's sake. Okay, so what I wanted to highlight is that flutter and fibrillation. What is the difference between them, and what do they look like? Flutter is very easy. Flutter, both of them, what they look like is that just a rapid chain of waves. Okay, flutter looks quite, how do I say this, uniform, while fibrillation looks quite chaotic often. Okay, flutter, it has a typical sawtooth appearance. What do I mean sawtooth? I mean, like, look at this. Okay, for example, this. Look how it looks so uniform, you could say, right? This is as opposed to some fibrillation where it looks quite chaotic all over the place. Okay, we'll get to more examples. I don't want no spoilers, but that's the main idea about them. That's flutter versus fibrillation. Flutter is more sawtooth and more uniform, while fibrillation is more chaotic. Okay, what I want to highlight, that was just to help you get the idea behind them. But what is the actual definitive way how to differ between a flutter and a fibrillation? Flutter is when the rate of the waves is less than 360. Okay, so the rate of the waves is gonna be somewhere between, like, I think between 200 and 360. Okay, that's flutter. Fibrillation, it's between 400 and 600. Okay, what does this mean? We'll get to it in a sec. And this gap, if you say, okay, what is this gap between them? We say like fibrillo-flutter. I think it's a bit of an outdated term, but it's just something to fill the gap. Let's just say it's something in between, something between flutter and fibrillation. So how do you calculate this frequency? You know, this 360, 400, what is this? So first thing, like, how do you calculate it is that you take 1500 divided by the peaks between these two waves. We call the FF, you know, the RR interval. This is the FF interval, the interval between the peaks of the two waves of a fibrillation or of flutter. Okay, to highlight again, these are not called P waves, by the way. In flutter and fibrillation, the rapid waves, like let's see over here, these are flutter waves. They're not called P waves. Okay, they are called F waves. Okay, if it's flutter, we say it's capital F. We use capital F to indicate flutter. If it's small f, and we use small f to indicate a fibrillation. Okay, so this is F, capital F for flutter, small f for fibrillation. Flutter is less than 360, i.e. if we take 1500 divided by the FF peak distance, like the FF interval, you could say, we'll find that it is less than 360. Okay, so let's take an example. So over here we see that if we go deep in and we see that between this peak, okay, this is, I'm just gonna give it a spoiler, this is flutter. Okay, basically we check the distance between two peaks. Okay, so between this peak and that peak is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I'd say about 6. Okay, let me just get my calculator and see if it's, I think it's 6 or 7. I can't, it's a bit detailed and the picture isn't too clear, but you'll be trying it out. So let's roughly say that it is about 6 millimeters between the two peaks. So you take 1500 divided by 6, and it gives you 250. So 250 is less than 360. So we say that it is flutter. Okay. However, I don't know if I calculated it right. It's roughly between 6 and 7. So you can, I don't know if you can say 6.5. No, you can't. It's either 6 or 7. But maybe I didn't take the best peak here. Maybe like between here and here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's a bit different. So let's roughly take. Okay. Actually, here. 1, 2, okay, maybe it's not 6 at all. It is totally not 6 at all. Okay, it's about 4 or 5. So if you take like. This is question 23, by the way. So at least based on the question, they've answered it based on the fact that it is the FF peak is 4. So because it is 4 over here, we can clearly see it. So 1500 divided by 4 is 375. So it's like maybe fibrillo flutter. If you can sort of prove that it's flutter by taking some longer wave, that might work as well, but don't judge me on this one. It's not the most solid example, but you get what I mean, that flutter is something that is less than 360, and you know now how to calculate this frequency, the frequency of the flutter or slash fibrillation. Okay, you take 1500 divided by the FF interval. Okay, so that's how you calculate flutter or fibrillation. Fibrillation, same idea, but you instead get a result between 400 and 600. When you do 1500 divided by the FF peak, you get 400 and 600, and this tells you that it is fibrillation. Okay, so again, I highlight, you do not call them P waves, you call them capital F or small f waves based on are they flutter or fibrillation. How do you know if they're flutter or fibrillation? You calculate based on the frequency. Okay. Again, I gotta highlight that when you write down in point 2, point 1 we said it is based on action and is based on like the mentioning the extrasystoles, and like the action is regular or not, are there any extrasystoles. Point 2, you gotta mention is it sinus or non-sinus, and if it's non-sinus you gotta highlight is it flutter or fibrillation, and if you when you highlight that it's flutter or fibrillation, you write next to it the rate. Okay, so I found that it is flutter. It's like point 2, you write down non-sinus, comma, flutter, comma, rate of flutter is, for example, I don't know, 280 beats. Okay, 280 beats per second. Like beats per minute. Okay, so that's how you calculate it. Okay, that is flutter and fibrillation. So onwards, the one thing I really wanted to highlight is actually quite important: PQ interval. Okay. So we know along these points, so along these 10 points that you're going to be going on. So action, rhythm, heart rate, P wave is going to be F wave here, of course. And here, like this point, like how to say this? This is the point that you say regular or irregular. This is the point when you say it's sinus or non-sinus. This is heart rate, of course. In this point, this is where you describe that it is flutter or fibrillation, and you write, is it whatchamacallit? What is the rate? Is it like 280, 300? Is it actually 500? So it's fibrillation or whatever. You describe it in this point. Fourth point. Fifth point here about PQ interval. You actually do not. Calculate this one. You don't write this one. You don't measure this one if it's flutter or fibrillation. Why? Because PQ interval, there is no P wave that you can say the distance between P and Q is this much. You can't do it. The other thing is that, say you did want to do it. Okay, which peak would you take? So if this is the QRS, like which peak would you take? Would you take this one or this one or this one, and then correlate it with the Q wave, and based on the QRS complex, and then based on that you would say the PQ interval. So no, you do not measure it. If it is flutter or fibrillation, you do not measure the PQ interval, and this is quite tricky because sometimes, and trust me, sometimes it is very tricky to notice that it is fibrillation. So please keep it on your mind. If you're not sure, like if you can't see P waves, or if you're unsure about the P waves, always go through the entire ECG and check Is it possibly flutter? Is it possibly fibrillation? Because flutter is typically quite clear, quite uniform, quite sawtooth appearance. It is usually clear. Fibrillation, however, it can be quite hidden, you know? So just keep that in mind, okay? And yeah, that is what I wanted to mention. And based on this, you don't take the PQ. So be careful, all right? You don't take the PQ interval if it's flutter fibrillation. Don't worry if it's taking a bit long. Hopefully we're gonna fly through it, because this is basically the explanatory phase, you could say, of the points. Next point. So rules: check all the leads. Okay, fibrillation, again, I repeat, can be quite hidden. Okay, so look at all the leads and look at the emptier spaces to help you in evaluation. Sometimes there's an emptier part of the ECG where things are more chill. There's no QRS complex, not that many QRS complex going on, and there is the best location to check, is there fibrillation or not? Because sometimes the baseline, it starts vibrating and you're like, okay, that looks like waves. There's definitely not any waves here. What is this? This is actually fibrillation. So be very careful about this point. This is a very golden rule. I really like this one, because look at this. Check all the irregular rhythm. If the rhythm is irregular, if point 1, if the action, sorry, that was a very irregular action. Sorry, action rhythm. If there's irregular action and there are no P waves, if there's irregular action, point 1 was irregular, point 2 here we found that there's no P waves, and you're sure there's no P waves, instantly you can say fibrillation. How cool is that? Because what happens is that fibrillation, what is it? Is the pacemaker is going a bit funky and is just rapidly firing, you know? So some of this rapid firing goes through to the ventricles and causes contraction, QRS complex, and some of it doesn't. And this happens at irregular spacings. So you end up with irregular distance between the RR peaks. So this is the whole idea about fibrillation. You don't need to know that, but that's just for your own knowledge. So that's the idea. Why is it irregular? So it's always in atrial fibrillation, always irregular action. Irregular action. Point 1 is irregular, and you don't have P waves, okay? Because P waves result from the sinus rhythm, okay? And sinus is not sinus rhythm. There's no P waves, and so instantly you don't find P waves. You find it's irregular action. Instantly go fibrillation. Just be careful with this. Don't be too haphazard with it. Make sure you don't see any P waves. And of course, when I say don't see any P waves, the rule of point 2 about seeing P waves is that you have to find a P wave before all the QRS complexes. So yeah, know what you're doing, okay? Positive P waves before every QRS complex in lead 1 or lead 2. Yeah. So, but if you don't find, if you really think, okay, I can't see any P waves, and you see that action is irregular, even if there's a problem with the other points, that is enough for you to say, okay, scratch those last few seconds. I don't know what I meant by even if there's a problem with the other points. But basically, that much, this and this. Sorry, I took like 5 minutes explaining this point, but instantly it's fibrillation. Anyways, this is a very important point here, that anything higher than 600 beats per minute. We said fibrillation is 400 to 600. Okay, what if it's more than 600? Do we call it super fibrillation? No, we call it not fibrillation at all. It is in fact an artifact, because you're measuring the ECG through the patient's chest wall, okay? And the chest wall has got like the pectoralis muscles and whatever. What if the patient's muscles are like you know, moving? Like, because muscles, the chest wall, the skeletal muscle also has electric activity. So these tiny twitches that aren't even visible to the naked eye, these can cause the very fast, very frequent oscillation of the baseline of the ECG. So it ends up looking like a fibrillation, but its rate is more than 600. So actually it's an artifact. It's just from the patient's movement. It's just from the skeletal muscle contractments and from the patient's movement during the ECG measurement and the small twitching of his skeletal muscles. Yeah? So beyond 600, it's an artifact. Next, all the waves must have sense. All the waves must make sense. They must all have an explanation. So how it goes. You go PQRST, PQRST, PQRST. Okay, that's how you're going through the beats. Okay, so if you see PQRSTT, that doesn't make sense. PQRSTT, PQRSTT, that's not TT. That's probably fibrillation and you didn't notice. Okay, or flutter. So be careful. Every wave must have an explanation. If you're going through like all of these points, I highlight them so much. Why? Because these will help you throughout the examples to notice some very, very hidden fibrillations that could actually end up I'm gonna end this man's entire career, or I don't know, I forgot the meme, but allow it. Is that I'm gonna end this man's whole career. Is that you gotta be careful that sometimes fibrillation can be very hidden, and these points hopefully will help you a lot in noticing these hidden fibrillations. Okay, especially this idea that all waves must have an explanation. Okay, you check all the leads. You know that if it's irregular and you can't see P waves, it's instantly fibrillation. And you don't fall for the idea that, oh, I see fibrillation. Check first its frequency. If it's more than 600, it's probably not free. It's not there. It's not fibrillation. It's probably just patient's movement. Also, in this idea of patient's movement, you'll notice that this so-called fibrillation that you think is fibrillation, but it's just the patient's movement, you'll find it in the whole ECG throughout everything. Even within the QRS complex, you'll feel it's sort of vibrating QRS complex. That's because the patient is moving. Okay, that's because of the patient's twitching, etc. You know, and that is not some sort of fibrillation. Yeah, so more than 600 is like typically like 1,000 or something like that. No, that's not fibrillation. So can also have absent P's. This is another point actually. You can have absent P's. You can have absent P waves, so it's non-sinus. However, the rhythm is regular. So this is, compare this to this point, okay? That here we said irregular action and no P waves, instantly fibrillation. However, what if you've got no P waves but the action is regular? What do you do then? Well, actually, you just say that it is not, you say what it is. It's non-sinus, but it is regular rhythm. So it is possible, you know, there is no P waves, it's true. And so we'll get to an example of it later. There is no P waves, however, there's no problem. Like or rather, it's regular rhythm, so it's not fibrillation, you know. You just say, I couldn't find P waves, and it's true. So that is the, and what is the detail behind it? It's called atrial rhythm, where the rhythm actually is not caused by the sinoatrial node, but it's actually caused by some other location within the atria. So we call it atrial rhythm, but it doesn't form these typical formations. I sure hope my theory is right about that one. Don't take my word for that one. I'm sure. Let me just remove that part from that, because I gotta actually revise that before giving it in an everlasting video. So scratch that few last seconds. Anyways, onwards. Again, in point 4, again we're going back and back to the same list of 10 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And here we describe action, is it regular or irregular, and are there extrasystoles. Rhythm, we describe, is it sinus or non-sinus. Heart rate, we describe it. P wave, we describe, is it actually P wave, and if it is P wave, is it, you know, width and height of it. You should know the limitations, the physiological limitations of it. Or if it's flutter or fibrillation, we have to mention the frequency of the flutter or fibrillation. Then PQ, we don't mention PQ in the case of flutter fibrillation. And now, before we tackle QRS, because it's not that much of a problematic point, we're gonna start tackling some ECGs. Alrighty. Yeah, so back to where we left off. Where did we? Yeah, there we go. I sure hope I didn't make any mistakes there. Give me just a millisecond. I hope I didn't make any. Yeah, everything's okay. So, going back, here, this is the first example, and you can pause for a bit, and then, if you like, you can try out, based on what you know, make all of your observations based on those 10 steps, and then come back, okay? You can have a few seconds. Yeah. So, what do we see here? Starting off, point 1, is it regular or irregular? I'm gonna pull out my notepad, and I'm gonna see here. Is it regular or irregular? Push this a bit. Yeah, so regular or irregular, 1. Okay, tolerable. No, that definitely is not tolerable. Yeah, so this is, as we see, this is irregular rhythm, okay? As we do that trick, we call it the sliding paper technique. So that told us that it's not regular, okay? That's the easiest way that I like to use. And clearly we see it even just by looking at it, is clearly this is not going to be the same as like this, okay? And it's going to be it's very far from each other. I.e. the R interval threshold of 0.16 seconds is definitely surpassed. So no, it is definitely irregular. So action is irregular. Do we see any extrasystoles? Well, we go through it. No, they all look like the same morphology. I don't see anything particularly popping out and coming before its time to say that it's an extra systole. So no, I don't think it's an extrasystole. So point 1. So irregular rhythm. Yeah, that's all we say, and we don't mention anything about any exercise. Point 2, the P waves, the sinus in the rhythm, is it sinus or non-sinus? Here, well, I don't see any P waves because I definitely see some sawtooth appearance, or at least what looks like sawtooth appearance. So point 2, we say non-sinus. Okay, clearly, this is very clear that it's non-sinus. Point 3, heart rate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 by 6, 48. Okay. Point 4 is that we describe it. We describe these so-called the P. They're not P waves now; they're F waves. But are they F capital or F small? Is it flutter fibrillation? We calculate between the peaks how many points is it, and we see that it's roughly 4 or 5. Okay, it's 4 or 5 between the peaks of the F waves. So do 1,500 divided by 4 or 5 really. So let's just say that it's 5. And if we said that it's 5, so we take 1,500 divided by 5, we get 300. So it's 300. Technically speaking, they did like 4, so they did 375. But as you see, Pathophys, they're not robots, they're humans. And so they will understand if you explain to them what you did. You know, and this is very nice of them, that sometimes if you explain to them the reason behind your logic, okay, this looks like sawtooth appearance, and also in some places I tried, it seemed like it was 5, so I tried 5, and so I got 300 for the frequency. They will not have a problem. I mean, they won't, definitely not, they won't even take a mark off for this, let alone failure or something like that, for something so minor like that, because it's not even necessarily a mistake. It's almost a matter of opinion, to be fully honest. But I think it might be more towards the 4 side, you know. So it's fair enough. So 1,500 divided by 4, you get 375. You can call it fibular flutter if you like. And yeah, so that's point 4. Then point 5, PQ interval. We don't say it because PQ, this is not PQ, okay? So that is that. So then, of course, then you go through the rest of the points. Undoubtedly, then you go through the QRS, ST, TQT, and Einthoven's triangle. Okay, and again to highlight, I'll leave this. Oh snap! Yeah, I'll leave these points to you if you would like to do them, but for time's sake, and also, this is not the goal right now. You know, the goal of the seminar again is to highlight the game-breaking mistakes. So, next up, here. Okay, you can take a few seconds if you'd like to do it. And I'll give you 3 seconds, or you can have infinity time, or as long as you would like, because you can pause. So, 3, 2, 1, let's go. So here, let's see if it's regular or not. Yeah, this is like about this much. Regular, still irregular, regular, 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 regular. Yeah, so it's regular. Okay, so that is regular rhythm. So that's cool. So all right. Next point is that so that's point 1. It is regular. This is question 24. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting. Previous one was 20. Previous one was 23. This one is 24. Hopefully, I'll remember to say these beforehand. So this is question 24. Regular, and is it sinus or not? Okay, that's point 2. Well, as we go through it, we see something over here. Is it P waves? I can't really say. Oh, by the way, don't be too narrow-sighted. Keep your eyes open to the whole ECG, and clearly you see, especially for V1. V1 is very good for information on the P wave and information on the presence of flutter or fibrillation. Here we clearly see that there is sawtooth morphology. Okay, so this is very likely from like off the bat, it is very likely going to be flutter. But we don't rush. We look through, and clearly in lead 2 as well, there's this regular thing which does not look that, or uniform thing that does not look like a P wave. Definitely that's not a P wave. So we say that this is going to be we say non-sinus for this point. Okay. Third point, we calculate the heart rate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 by 6, and we say that is 72 roughly. Okay. The third point, that's fourth point. We describe these F waves, and we can take it from here. We can take their peaks. We measure them. 1,500 divided by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 roughly. About 5 or 6, I would say. About maybe 5. Maybe 5. It's a bit difficult to say. 5 or 6. To be honest, they won't really mind so long as you have logic and evidence to back it up. It will give you that it's roughly about 250 to 300. That's flutter range. So you say flutter, and then you don't calculate PQ interval, of course. Okay, do you get that? Another point, of course, I forgot to highlight. Actually, one of the points here, the last points on this idea of rhythm, is that last point I forgot to mention. Sometimes the rhythm can look quite. Oh no, this looks like there's fibrillation, because I see these waves, like a lot of these small waves, you know. So I'm like, oh snap, that might be fibrillation, or it might at least be flutter, you know. And it turns out that it's neither of them. Why? Because sometimes actually the patient has tachycardia. So check for that first, because sometimes the patient has tachycardia, so all the waves are very close to each other. So a P wave, a T wave, like the T wave of the previous beat, next to the P wave of the beat after, so like QR, P, QRS, T, P, QRS, the T next to the P, like T, P, you'd say, oh, it's like these two waves, it was like, oh, snap, that's fibrillation. No. If it's two waves, it's still feasible that it might be just T wave followed by a P wave. However, if it's 3 beats, then you can start talking. Like, so it's not going to be a dual T wave or something like that. Like PQRS, T, PQRS, that's not real. So again, all the waves must make sense. All of them must have an explanation. Okay. So going back to where we left off. So we left off. Which one did we finished this one? Now again, you can pause if you like. 3, 2, 1. So here again, we're going to do the whole regularity thing. You can pause if you like and try it out, and then come back. This is question 19. Okay, if you'd like to try it out first. Okay, so let's start off. So again, I'm just going to be using this thing to check if it's regular or not, and we're just scanning through it, and we see here already there's something here, you know. And here, to be honest, it looks very similar to the rest of the beats, so it's unlikely to be an extrasystole. And the other point to highlight here is that, again, don't be blind, look around. Also keep your focus especially on V1. Lead 2 and V1 are the most informative about these 2 points, the second point and the fourth point, of rhythm and of the P wave / F waves. So this is very typically going to be either fibrillation or flutter, and we can tell based on the frequency. Okay, this is question 19, by the way. 19 is the question, and you can check roughly for the rhythm. It roughly almost looks regular, question mark. Some points are very questionable though. Might be irregular there. Might be more than 0.16. However, that thing doesn't look like an extrasystole because it looks so. There's no difference between them. You might argue that it might be an extrasystole. It is feasible, but this definitely rules it out, because here we see fibrillation, so fibrillation doesn't have regular rhythm. So we just sort of just do a backwards operation and say, oh, we always thought it was irregular rhythm. So we'll just work with that. All right. So anyways, point 1, we'll say irregular, especially because this thing is popping out. Fair enough. Point 2, we say sinus or non-sinus. Again, just peek over here, you can tell it's definitely non-sinus. Also, we don't see no P waves. Point 3, heart rate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, blah 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 blah. The heart rate's gonna be like 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 by 6, 84. So, whatchamacallit, that's 84 is the heart rate. Fourth point is the thingy, whatchamacallit, the F waves. So we check them here. This is where they're most visible. Take two of their peaks. So here, these look like two nice peaks. Or here's very good. Yeah, here is good. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 or 5, I would say. Then again, when you hear me in the seminar saying "then again," it is because I say an answer based on what I see. Then I go look at the ECG script and I say, "Oh, the script doesn't agree with me. Let me modify my answer a bit," because I don't know. This isn't very easy, I must say. 1, 2, 3, even because they've apparently answered based on that it is apparently 3.5. Okay, allow them. Or wait, they said 4, right? No, what? How did they? Okay, that's very strange. I'm not sure how they got their answer, but they somehow used the wave as the FF distance is about 3.5. So sure, allow them, but basically again and again, if you're able to present your logic, then no one's gonna have a problem with you. However, it is quite debatable. You might even be able to get away with the idea that this is like fibuloflutter or something like that, because not necessarily fibrillation, not necessarily flutter, it's somewhere in between. You can't really say. The number, if you use 4, is the FF peak distance. You'll get actually 375, which actually is fibrilloflutter. So if you're able to present your logic, really they're not robots, so they won't matter. So long as it's between flutter and fibrillation. If it's if you confuse between fibrillation and sinus rhythm, then you've got a big problem actually. And they're not robots, but they are teachers, and they're harsh teachers if you make a mistake like that. So watch out for that point. Okay, so that is the FF business, and that's the fibrillation business, flutter business. That's point 1, 2, 3, 4, and here we're going to stop at this point and say that it's and we're not going to calculate PQ interval, of course. Yeah. So that is that example, and what is the next example? This is number 18. Okay. And you may pause. This is question 18. Whenever you're ready, you can replay. So we're going to, I'm not even going to do this. This is irregular off the bat. I'm not even going to move a finger. This is irregular. Heart rate, is it sinus or not? Well, I don't see P waves. Some dots here, I don't think they're P waves. Lead 2. I see 3 jiggles over here. 1, 2, or a bunch of like small movements here. I think that might actually be, guess what? Say V1 supports it. What is this? What is the explanation behind this? What is the explanation behind this? What are these weird movements over here? I can almost see like there's clearly something going on here, especially here. Like I said, in this point over here, is that always when you're in doubt, look at the emptier spaces. Okay, look at the emptier spaces, and so by checking the emptier spaces, like over here, we can clearly tell that there's something going on and there's no explanation behind this. These aren't P waves, this is fibrillation, okay? The other idea is that we can go back to the idea that irregular action, no P waves, instantly we say fibrillation, okay? So irregular action, off the bat we can say that. No P waves, I can't see no P, instantly we can say fibrillation, or at least put it the default idea in your head that this is going to be fibrillation, and we can say that indeed. So next point is that so fibrillation, so we describe point 1, point 2 is non-sinus, point 3 is the heart rate, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 by 6, 13 by 6, 78. Fourth point, describe the FF interval, okay, and tell what is the frequency of the F beats. So the FF interval is going to be very tricky. 1, 2, 3. Say about 3, 3.5. I'd say about 3 roughly. Okay, is the distance between the peaks. It's very hard to say, to be honest. And oh, I can zoom. Oh snap! I forgot I can zoom in. Wow, I forgot that. Okay, so let me just zoom in and move to the area. So let's see. 1, 2, 3. It is about 3. You could say that it's about 3. And now you can see more clearly that these peaks, they're definitely not P waves. 2, 3, 3 or 4, something roughly 3 or 4. But again, it doesn't really match the picture of flutter. So it is safer as well to say fibrillation, because again, flutter typically has a sawtooth appearance, and also the frequency here does seem to suggest more that it's more likely fibrillation. So the frequency, if you say 3, so say 1500 divided by 3 is 500. So frequency of 500 atrial fibrillation. Okay, so you don't calculate PQ. That done? Next question. Of course, you don't stop there in the credit test. You have to go through the next of the 5 points. You check the QRS, Sokolov, whatever, Q wave, largest Q, blah blah blah. I'm just tackling this because this is the main point of interest for the time being. Okay, so this is question 22. Okay, example 22. Whenever you're ready. 3, 2, 1. Yes, you're ready now. If you're not, you can pause. So irregular instant. I'm not gonna tire myself. As you see, the more you practice on this, the more you the more quickly you go through these. This is clearly action irregular. P waves, blah 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 blah. I don't see P waves. And V1, this is fibrillation. Instantly you can tell there's some fibrillation going on here. So that's gonna be 4. And what is gonna be? You can check the heart rate. And then afterwards you check here, is it flutter or fibrillation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's try another area. Let's see where else. Say over here. Okay, that's not very clear. Oh, here. Okay, that's less clear. Oh god. This isn't easy. Let me just say that from now. Oh, here, that's very clear. 1, 2, 3. About 3.5 or something like that. I don't know what to tell you guys. But yeah, it's definitely. Oh, there. I mean, that's oh, there. That's a good place right there. Oh, can I? There. Keep going. Keep going. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, there we go. Yes. So 1, 2, 3. That is roughly gonna be 3. So it's about whatchamacallit. Frequency is gonna be about 500. I sure hope I'm right. I didn't. So yeah, roughly it's about right. So it's about 3-ish, 4. So it's gonna roughly be like whatchamacallit. Frequency is gonna be somewhere between 400 and 500. Okay, roughly around that range, and it's fibrillation. Okay, again, they're not robots, so they won't mind. But roughly, again, typically it's not that much of an issue, the idea of fibrillation versus flutter, because flutter, again, it is very textbook looking. Like, look at this example, it's very clearly sawtooth appearance, etc. Fibrillation is typically quite hidden and quite chaotic, you could say. Like, you know, it's quite unstable. Here it looks like one thing, here it looks not like that, here it looks, so it's quite different. You'll get what I mean, you know. So that's it for that example. For the most part, we're done. Then we don't calculate PQ, of course. Next example, this this is a happy heart syndrome. Allow this. next question. So this is question 27. Okay, so whenever you're ready, and then we can tackle it. Ask if you're ready, but I wouldn't be able to hear you. hear your answer. Okay, so starting off, instantly we check, is it regular or not? So we start off with the notepad file. That's roughly it. So I scan this through this sliding paper technique. This is irregular. Looks irregular to me. Debatable. Yeah, here definitely irregular. No, this is irregular rhythm, undoubted. Okay, so that's point 1. I don't see any extrasystoles. 0.3 heart rate, 1, 2, 3. It's tachycardia. I'm gonna tell you from now, it is tachycardia. Okay, 0.4. Wait a second. Sorry, forgot 0.2. Is it sinus or not? Sinus or not? I don't know if I see any P waves here. Something's going on here. I don't like that. And this confirms it. Checking V1 confirms that definitely some funky business is going on here. Again, we're not sure when we see over here. It's quite debatable. But here, for example, Q, this is QRS, T. Okay, this is a P wave. This is a question mark. Another P wave? Nope. This is T wave. Then another P wave. Then another P wave? No. QR, P, QRS, T, P, P, P. No, there is no. It's only gonna be one P wave. So this is definitely non-sinus, and this is definitely gonna be fibrillation. Okay, so 0.3 tachycardia, 0.4. You highlight what the number is for tachycardia. 0.4, you check for the frequency, and this frequency is going to be, let's just say, a fibrillation. Fibrillation frequency, yeah? Small f's for fibrillation. So 1, 2, 3. About roughly, again, 3 or 4. And that's done. We're done for that example. That's as much time as we're going to spend for that, okay? Don't calculate PQ. Next, I'm afraid that you're gonna forget how to calculate PQ, because we haven't calculated it for any of these because of our focus on the fibrillation. Anyways, this is example 20. Okay. Alrighty. So regular or irregular. Clearly there are gaps here. This is irregular. 0.2, and you use the pad to check out, but I can tell you from now it's clearly irregular. 0.2, sinus or non-sinus, I can't really tell easily. However, empty spaces, here I can't really tell any P waves. Something's going on. What is this? P, QRS, or like QRS, T, P, P. No, that's not gonna work. Here as well, the empty spaces, there are multiple empty spaces to help you notice that something like there is fibrillation going on. Okay, so instantly when you, or rather, yeah, fibrillation is going. So basically, we already said that it's irregular, and we said that we don't see P waves, and so, or this is definitely not P wave because it's like 3 in a row. So there is no such thing as 3 in a row. So this is going to be fibrillation. 0.3 is heart rate. It's going to be tachycardia. 0.4 is going to be what is the frequency of the fibrillation, and we can focus on some empty space that looks like it'll help us out. Maybe this might be the best place for it, or maybe not, but it's pretty alright, possibly. 1, 2, 3, about 3, so we say about 500 is the rate, and that is fibrillation. So we're done with that example. Yeah, well, you have some more work to do, of course. Anyways, next, irregular. I'm sorry I didn't even give you time for this one. Clearly irregular. And what about 0.2? P waves or not? P waves, do you see any P waves? You go through all of it. This is question 29, by the way. And you can pause whenever you like just to think about it more. P waves, you can even use V1 to help you with the P wave idea, of course. And I don't see any P waves. So it's irregular. I don't see P waves, and that's enough for me to say that it is atrial fibrillation, even if I don't like that's pretty much enough. And yeah, so that is that. And basically the next thing to look in here is that what is the frequency of this fibrillation that we have said that we have found. We've got to find like where to take it from. It's going to be this empty area over here. This looks like a possible area, and this is very hard, but just decide that something is a peak. Say here 1, 2, 3, 3-ish, 4-ish. So it's just roughly say that it's 1,500 divided by about 3.5, and you get about rate between 400 500, and that is enough. Okay, no PQ. Do not calculate PQ interval. Okay, next question. Just glazing through it here because the main idea, I think the main idea has reached you. Yeah, I'm just making sure that we cover all of these just to make sure that there's no hidden idea in any of these examples. Question 30. This is question 30. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So This is the RR. This is irregular. Instantly. Point 1, irregular. Extrasystoles, question mark. No extrasystoles. Might be checked through the leads. You don't see anything irregular popping out. Point 3, heart rate. You calculate. Point 4, keep forgetting point 2, man. I don't see P waves. I don't think I see P waves. Before every thing in lead 2. I mean, this might even look like P waves, you know. However, I don't really see them. Like, there is none here. There is none here. I don't think that's P wave. And also, let's see V1. Oh, sorry, I jumped into the other question. So V1, does V1 help us? Oh yes, V1 helps us. There's a jiggly line that has no explanation, and here's V2 as well. This is definitely fibrillation. Okay, see how tricky it is to miss fibrillation? Always have a universal view and always keep this in mind. Irregular, and you have trouble seeing P waves, go look around for something that might be fibrillation, okay? Because clearly here I feel very I don't see anything. I don't see any P waves. So here, like you can clearly tell that this is fibrillation as well. Across all the leads, you can't really say that anything here is a P wave, you know. So that's fibrillation, and very easily we can tell that it's 1, 2, 3. Again, 3, 1, 2, 3. So frequency 1,500 divided by 3 is 500. So that's the fourth point. Fibrillation, frequency of 500 beats per second. Beats per minute. Again, I make a mistake. And yeah, don't calculate PQ. Next, this is question 31. 3, 2, 1. Again, this is gonna be, is it regular or irregular? Yeah, this is the T waves here look a bit sharp, so just don't confuse the T waves with R's. No, this is definitely irregular. Very easily irregular. That's point 1. Extrasystoles, everything looks normal. I don't think so. Point 2, P waves. No, I don't think I see P waves. These are all T waves, T waves, T waves. I don't see any P waves. V1, I see multiple P waves. That's not multiple, that's fibrillation. Okay, fibrillation, check the heart rate, then check the frequency of this. You find that it is basically about 1, 2, 3, 3.5. So your rate is between 400 and 500. Pick a number in the middle. Okay, now we're done for that question. Now, question 13. I'll give you a few seconds to work on it. So, what is 13? Alright, so we start off. So, is it regular or irregular? Let's start off. So here, alright, so we start scanning, sliding paper technique. And we start checking, and we're checking. It still seems regular. Oh, but this might be an extrasystole because it's just extra. It's coming early. It's coming too early. So let's just ignore this beat part. It's regular, and this is regular. So technically speaking, this looks quite regular. All right, and okay, next thing, but with an extrasystole. Is there any maybe fibrillation that we're sort of worried about? Well, technically speaking, look at lead 2. That's a P wave. P wave, P wave, P wave, P wave, P wave, P wave. These are all P waves. There's just something going on here. P, Q, R, S, T. And because this is an extrasystole, extrasystoles don't have P waves, okay, by the way. They don't have P waves, extrasystoles. So ignore this beat altogether. It is not don't depend on it. And just skip it. So P, Q, R, S, T, P, Q, R. So yeah, I see P waves everywhere. So actually, this is actually sinus rhythm. But you're gonna say, oh wait, what? There's jiggling all over the place, man. What do you mean like P wave? There's definitely fibrillation. Oh, it's fibrillation, you say. So let us see the frequency of this fibrillation. Okay, so I'm gonna take these two peaks. Okay, so distance between them is 1 square. So fibrillation of frequency of 1,500, because 1,500 divided by 1 is 1,500. So you're gonna tell me that this guy's magical heart is able to beat 1,500 beats per minute. I'll say no, fam. This is not fibrillation. This is the patient's muscles twitching and the patient moving around. This is that point that we mentioned, okay? So this is actually not fibrillation. This is actually a perfectly normal patient with a singular extrasystole. Point 1, we say regular with an extrasystole, and you mark this. I think you do mark this as a pathology according to the ECG script. You mark this as a pathology, but keep going. It's not. You still count. It still counts as regular. We see P waves. So you mentioned the P waves. You describe the P waves in the 4th point. You talk about the heart rate. The heart rate is, well, you calculate it, and that's usually not our problem. And or we don't have a problem with that, rather. And yeah, we do measure the PQ now, and we start from the beginning of the P wave. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 4 times 0.04. So it's roughly like 0.16, 0.16. So it's 4-ish, 5-ish. So it's like 0.16, 0.20, something like that. Yeah. You got to be a whole lot more accurate than I am, because I'm just sort of trying to save time. But you will have all the time you need to be as accurate as you can, and you should be quite accurate. And there should be how does this? They say that they prefer that you are more skeptical, or rather not more skeptical, rather more extreme, you could say, or rather more insisting that there's a pathology, sort of like that. Not that there always is a pathology, but it's just safer that way, that you don't miss a patient who really does have a pathology. Within logical bounds, obviously, okay? So you don't say that this patient has, fibrillation when he clearly does not have a fibrillation, okay? Because the patient is just twitching. Okay, so this is question 6. We'd like a bit of time to work on that. So, question 6. What can you tell me about it? You should go through, I recommend actually going through this one, and like actually if you haven't been doing it, pause a bit, try out at least the first few points. Practice, it's all practice. The main thing I wanted to get to you is that it's all about, you got to practice ECG. Practice, and you get better at it, you know? So, we go with it. If you haven't paused, pause and try it out yourself, but we run through it. So, I'm quite glad that I found out this idea of the notepad, otherwise this would have been real weird to do otherwise. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, seems regular so far. Sliding paper technique. 1, 1, is good, it's good. Yeah, it's regular. So that's regular rhythm. And next point, is it sinus or non-sinus? Well, do we see P waves between everything? Well, it looks kind of messy, but let's decipher the waves. P, Q, R, S, T, 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 P, Q, R, S, T. All the way. These are two waves, always two waves. This is normal. So actually, it is regular rhythm, sinus rhythm. So we're good. 3rd point, heart rate. We can clearly see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, that this guy had a lot of coffee. This guy is 19 times 6, 114. The guy he's had a lot of coffee. This is tachycardia, clearly, okay? And you mark that as a pathology. Don't take that, don't disregard the 3rd point. You give all the points their proper due, and you mark the pathologies where they are, you know? Got to be done. So that's point 1, 2, 3. Point 4, you describe the P wave. You say its height and its weight. No, you say its height and its its height and its thingy. Width. Check this out. This is quite interesting. Look at lead 2, okay? Where's the P wave in lead 2? This is very funny, actually. Be very careful here that actually this is the R wave. As you see, the leads are synchronized, you know, that we're seeing the same electrical activity of the heart, but with different windows. We're looking at them from different angles. That's all this lead business is. But check this out here. This is the R wave, actually. And this is the P wave. The P wave is actually bigger than the R wave. Very cool. Don't make that mistake, you know, but just an interesting point. And be careful with that. Also measure the P wave, see if there's any pathology with it. You know the physiological ranges, etc. So next you see the PQ and you check if it's normal, all that shabush bang, and you're all right, okay? And you measure the PQ because P wave is normal, it's normal, sinus rhythm, regular, and this I took this example for you so that you could see that that sometimes tachycardia can trick you into thinking it's fibrillation or something, you know? So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that. And again, I wanted to highlight this example. Oh no, what are you talking about, man? There's clearly guys jiggling all over the place. No, again, so there's fibrillation here. No, look, 1. So if you're gonna tell me that it's fibrillation with frequency 1500, I'll tell you that is incorrect. Okay, so onwards. Next example is question 34 of the scripta. Alright, if you need some time, you can go, but anyways. So you're gonna start off saying, whoa, man, what is going on here? Is this patient alright? This guy's weird, man. So starting off, we want to check, is it regular or irregular? Okay, that's the first point. We actually, this part, ignore it. Because why would we ignore it? Because all of it is messy. So clearly the patient, like how to say this? Either they were fitting on the electrodes, or an electrode was or the patient was getting off his bed or getting onto his bed or whatever, because this whole this is an artifact. Okay, so let's just say that the ECG starts here, and we can we take our measurements and things like from over here. Okay, so we do that, and we take this guy and we start checking, is it regular or not. I think the main reason I took this example is just to highlight that idea of the funky business going on in the beginning. Oh, it's an exorcistal, man, what's going on? No, it's not an exorcistal, it's just the guy is sitting down or whatever. So this is regular rate. P waves, I don't see P waves. Oh, I see P waves. I see P. So this is P waves, they're perfectly fine. So that's P waves, PQRS, PQRS is perfectly normal. And so sinus rhythm, a regular rhythm, action is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We count these for the heart rate, of course. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Because despite him getting onto the chair or whatever, he was still his heart was still beating. You know, maybe they might not be representative, but they're still beats. So we count them. We count them for the heart rate calculation. So that's, do we say 12 beats? So it's like 12 by 6 is about 72 beats per minute. Yeah. 3, 4, we described the P waves, pretty small, but joke to them. 0.5 PQ, and we measured that, and that's pretty much the majority of the points. But to check out PQ here, we notice actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times 0.4 is 0 is like 5 times 0.20. Maybe if we check somewhere else, we might even find it to be thingy. We might even find it to be prolonged. And I want to sort of make that happen because I know what's in the script. Oh, it's not. Oh wait, you start from the beginning of the P wave, and you start and you take a lead in which the P wave is as big as it is. You know. So let's go here. Start here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is definitely 6. Okay, fair enough. So 6 times 0.04 is 0.24, and that's beyond the limit. And so you mark that as a pathology. It's prolonged PQ interval. You gotta mark that as a pathology. Yeah. So that's that part. Okay. Next question. That was question 34. This is question 40 of the script. Okay. So. So, question 40, and we check whether the rhythm is regular or not. And we start off. We do that scan. This is really not as easy as it looks to keep the hand stable. This is weird. 1, 2, 2. It's easier with a piece of paper. Using paper technique. Okay, so it is regular. And how about S wave? P waves, one P waves are all right. So it's sinus rhythm. P waves are normal. Clearly, there's tachycardia. I'm not even going to calculate it. There's tachycardia, undoubted. Fourth point is you characterize the P wave. Then fifth point is you check the PQ. We're good. Okay. That's all for this question, and that is all for that part. Now it's going to be just like a few more slides, so bear with me. So now just PQ. It is not to be measured in fibrillation or flutter, and it might be irregular. Actually, PQ interval might be irregular, so you need to mention that, because if the PQ interval is in a certain way in one part, but then it's different in another part, you should probably mention that, because which part will you take, you know? So you gotta mention, so how you don't say PQ interval is 0.20 and 0.12. It doesn't work that way. If it's two different PQ intervals, you gotta mention it, okay? And there's a specific disease associated with this, like, you know. So an example is over here. This is example 37. If you want to check it, and definitely you can expect what kind of pathology is going to have, because I just explained it. So is it regular or not? It is clearly irregular. Point 1. Point 2. P waves. I see P waves. It's a P wave, P wave, P wave, P wave, P wave. Clearly the P wave is sort of moving around, you could say. It's at different distances from the QRS complex. Here it's right next to it. Here it's quite far. It's close. You know, I can't really. Somewhere there, maybe. Oh, lead 2 is better. P there. That's P wave there. P wave here, and a QRS wave is actually missing here. This is called an AV block, second grade AV block. Okay. So just a heads up for that. Don't tell me it's fibrillation or something like that, because really there's no evidence for fibrillation, because yes, it is irregular. Yes, I might even say that this looks a bit strange up here, maybe. Yes, I would say as well that this is two waves, one wave, two wave, then some third wave. But here it's absolutely silent, and these are clearly, you could say these are P waves, and it's not like jiggling, you could say. It's just there's a T wave, P wave. There's a discernible P, like a wave, like, you know, P QRS T, and a silence P QRS. So it's, you can say that these are P waves. You wouldn't say that this is a fibrillation or something like that, you know, because I can clearly tell that this is a P. You can say that these are P waves. Well, in any of the many examples of fibrillation, you can't really say, put your finger solidly that something is a P wave, because it's jiggling all over the place, you know, jiggle over there, V1, jiggle like there, like P wave, that's too close as well. It's not like another way to indicate this is that the idea that here, which one was it? This was 37, right? Yeah. Here, the idea as well is that there's P wave, PQRST, PQRST, PQRST. Where is it? Yeah, PQRST, PQRST. Yeah, I'm not gonna mention that part. I was gonna mention something a bit. It's a bit advanced and it's not needed for. It's about, and just a bit incorrect as well. So I'm just gonna cover it up. But mainly, basically, I'd say that it's not enough evidence, I would say, because it's irregular, yes, but but you can see P waves, okay? So I wouldn't say fibrillation, okay? That is the main thing that I would say, and that should clear things up, yeah. That's the main point I wanted. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Mentioned the heart rate. Clearly, there's bradycardia. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. By 6 is 36. The guy's got very slow heart rate, dangerously slow. You mark that as a pathology. Point 4 QRS PQ. No. Point 4, you describe these P waves. Describe the P wave. Point 5 PQ interval, and you see there's one thing over here, and it's totally different over here. You know. So you mentioned that PQ interval is changing, is not constant. As a pathology, you mark it. Okay, that's all. QRS. I just wanted to mention some passing. These are also critical, but not as, how to say this? The criticality is less dense compared to all the many critical points associated with fibrillation, etc. So QRS, what you're looking for is the longest QRS in the ECG. In the whole ECG, you're looking for the longest QRS. Pathological cues, you're also looking for pathological cues. So there's 3 points under the QRS point. If we go back to the original list, we see that there's 3 points under ABC. That longest QRS, long cues, like prolonged cues, and Sokolov, okay? So, Kolov. So, Kolov. There's 3 points that, first off, is longest QRS is what you want to check for. Then pathological cues. Is there any cue that's a bit longer than it should be physiologically? And you've got the limit in your sheet. And the point here is that an absent cue isn't a pathology. So don't go marking, oh, there's a big exclamation mark here, and you put it and there's no cue. That's why you've got absent cue isn't pathology, okay? Next thing is that QS wave counts as a long cue, okay? So if there's a big wave, it's like, do you know QS wave? QS wave means like line is like QRS. You know how there's QRS? It's basically no R, there's no R wave, and then you just see a big sink, you know, like that. That means Q and S have fused together, and we call that a QS wave, and we count that as a long Q actually, you know. So you mark that as a pathology, yeah. Next is Sokolov. Sokolov is used to measure the if there's any hypertrophy of the ventricle, and very important is that whatchamacallit, if it's 0.12, specific numbers, okay? If the QRS, if the width of a QRS complex is 0.12, if it's up to 0.11, then it's okay, okay? If it reaches 0.12, then it is hypertrophy of the ventricle. The ventricle is too big, okay? And so it's causing prolongation of the contraction, okay? However, if it is bigger than 0.12, you don't calculate Sokolov, okay? This is based on, whatchamacallit. I'm sorry, before you take the Sokolov index, yeah, this is probably going to, yeah, this, because it's not hypertrophy, it's a block, yeah, there we go. Maybe I'll put this over here. I think that's more appropriate. So we use to whether the QRS is long or not. We use that to measure the hypertrophy of the ventricle. Sokolov is not, or rather should not be measured if QRS is 0.13 or above, because it is not a block. It is not hypertrophy. It is a block. It is like the electricity can't pass beyond, and so it is a bundle branch block or whatever. It is not hypertrophy, and Sokolov is used to measure hypertrophy. You know, is used to check for hypertrophy of the ventricle. There we go. Yeah. So again, what I want to highlight: Sokolov, you do it if the QRS complex, it is up to 0.12. If it's bigger than 0.12, i.e. if it's 0.13, we do not measure Sokolov. We instantly say that under Sokolov, like A, B, C, under Sokolov, we say that is not, cannot be measured, okay? And we skip that point, yeah? So, check this point, okay? This is question 18 that we tried out, okay? Of the scripta. So, 18, we start off. Irregular, I'm just gonna skip, it's totally irregular. P waves, this is no P waves. No P waves, and there's jiggly lines over here, and there's jiggly lines over here. This is clearly fibrillation. Point 1, that's point 2, non-sinus. Point 3, heart rate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 by 6 is 13 by 6. I keep calculating 78, so it's normal. Point 4, fibrillation. This is clearly fibrillation, and we calculate the peaks. We're gonna skip that. Point 5, PQ interval. We don't calculate it. Point 6, QRS complex. This is what the point we're in. We are at, and you go through all of them, okay? And you see, or rather, not all of them. We go. There's the 3 points. There's QRS. There's a prolonged Q, and there's Sokolov. So we start with the. We can start with the prolonged Q if you like. And basically you check for the leads. Okay, I can't see Qs over here. I can't see Qs. Qs are quite present here in AVR. If I'm not mistaken though, yeah, a prolonged Q in AVR is not a pathology. I'm gonna add that to the notes. Excuse me for sort of adding on the QS. Yeah, prolonged Q during or in AVR is not a pathology. In AVR it is not a pathology. Whoa. In AVR is not a pathology. Yeah. So back there, AVR. So we skip AVR. Q's over here. These aren't Q waves, okay? Because there's a small R wave before them. Very tiny R wave. Tiny. If you look at it, there's a. I'm just gonna pretend that. Oh wait. I'm just gonna pretend that this. Oh wait, there R wave. Hey, R waves. There's tiny dots over there. That's an R wave. Okay. Allow. Just don't judge. Allow it to be. Now let's check. Whatchamacallit. Keep going. So here, there we go. This is a QS. Okay. This is what you call a QS. It is debatable. AVL. You can debate that maybe it is also QS, so I can't really say for sure, but here it is quite clear, for example, especially right here. Yes, this looks quite clear that there is no R, and so it is clearly QS, and it's quite big, 1, 2. So that's like 0.6 or 0.8. Okay, so that's clearly pathological, yeah? So we mark that, and that is the main thing that I wanted to show in this example, okay? And we can move on then. Then the idea is that ST elevations, depressions, I'm just going to say this theoretically, is that basically you need to check all the leads. This is probably the most point that you're going to practice while doing the whatchamacallit, going through the ECG scripta. And I'd say that like it is quite a tricky point, but it's just a matter of practice. But you got to be very precise, okay? You got to be very precise and look a lot and see, is there any, especially depressions, especially depressions, are there any SD depressions? And next is you check all the leads. Technically speaking, you don't need a ruler. You can do it visually. You see, is the QRS, the ST junction, the junction between the between the S wave and the ST segment, is it like decreased, or is it low, or is it high? And based on that, you're able to sort of tell, is it elevation or depression, okay? To be honest, there's not too much for me to say here. I can just give you the example number. It's 43, and that's homework for you. Check, is it depression or not? And yes, I'm going to just tell you to do that. Point 8 is T waves, and the job is that basically, or I'm just showing you critical points, you know, not about what you're supposed to calculate, etc. So actually, I'm going to show you this trick, is that sometimes biphasic T waves exist, and I used to find them quite tricky. But one thing that used to help me is that vertical, okay, the waves are all the same vertically, okay. So basically, in this ECG, these waves are all the same. It's basically the same wave, but we're looking at it, the same beat, but we're looking at it from different angles, right? So basically, if we check here, or like, let's see, yeah, over here, okay, this was the example I want to see. This is clearly a T wave, but okay, I'm not sure what's going on here. Is this a small T wave, or is this like a biphasic T? I'm not sure. How do you tell? Well, there's T waves over here, and basically we can say from the beginning of this square to the end of this square is all T wave territory. And we can go down, and clearly here, this part, there's some part of the T wave here and some part increased here, and same thing here. So it's down here, but then it's up here. So we say, and here as well, because it's in this idea that all of this square and a half is T wave territory. And if we check the other places vertically, this square and a half T wave territory, it's down here and it's up there, so it's biphasic, pre-terminal biphasic negative, yeah? So that's how you do it. That's T waves. And biphasic means like one part's down, one part's up, like it's not a proper hill of a T wave, okay? And also, that pre-terminal means that part of the T wave which is before the terminus, i.e. the end of the T wave, is either positive or negative. So basically here we would say that it is Let me just, oh snap, okay there, okay, oh please stick to what you're in. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so here we say that this is the terminus, i.e. the end of the T wave. The second half is positive, the first half is negative. We describe the T wave's name based on the first half. So we say biphasic, pre-terminal, i.e. before the terminus, negative. Pre-terminal, whoa. How did I? Give me a 1 millisecond, make sure I confirm my information before I. Yeah, biphasic pre-terminal negative, i.e. pre-terminal means the first part, okay? This is the terminal part, this is the first part. So the terminal part is positive, but the pre-terminal part, i.e. the beginning part, is negative. So we call it biphasic pre-terminal negative, okay? That is that part, and QT, I just measure the QT. The last trick I want to show you is Einthoven's triangle. And this is going to take a few seconds because there's a much easier way than to see what is the axis of mean electrical axis. Like, is it deviated to the left or the right, or is it normal? How do we tell it? The easiest way is that we just check two leads, lead 1 and lead AVF. And we check the QRS complexes for them, for lead 1 and AVF. We check the biggest peak in lead 1 and AVF, okay? And we see that lead 1, for example, there's a big R in lead 1, and the biggest thing is a big R. And in AVF, also, the biggest one is a big R. So they're going the same way. So this is same. So this is the first case. And this first case lands in this quadrant. It is the healthy range, between 0 and 90. It is between this range, and it's physiological, okay? Instantly we can write that down, that it's between 0 and 9 is physiological, like, and we don't mark it as a pathology. That's the main thing, they don't want exact numbers. What they're looking for mainly is pathologies, physio department, like, if there's no pathology, they don't mind if you didn't mark it, Second case is that if lead 1 it is more predominantly negative, so like a big S wave, and the S wave is larger than like the R wave, so there's a big S wave, and AVF is predominantly positive, okay? So negative and positive, they're going, the lead 1 and AVF are pointing towards each other. They're going towards each other, and so we say that when they're going towards each other, like, they love each other. So they love each other, and that is right. You can say that's the example that the professor gave me. And so they are right, and so it is to the right. This is right axis deviation. There's the patient's right, patient's right, and so right axis deviation. And so mean electrical axis is going to be somewhere here, okay? Third case is if they're far away from, if they hate each other, they're going far away from each other, i.e. lead 1 is predominantly positive, lead 1 is predominantly positive, and AVF is predominantly negative, the QRS complex I'm speaking about. So they're away from each other, so they hate each other, and so they're away, and that is left. That is at least not right, i.e. left. So it's here, in this quadrant, okay? So it's left axis deviation, patient's left. And lastly, this is the extreme case, which pretty much doesn't clinically happen so often, but it's going to be here, if they're both going downwards, if they're both predominantly negative, okay? And that is it for the ECG seminar. I really hope that it is helpful for you. And the last thing I'd like to say is take-home message is go home. Take-home message is practice a lot. Okay, that is that, and I hope this has been helpful for you. And I wish you all the best for not just ECG but all your studies. And I hope for you everything good. All the best.